Atkins, who joined us last week and a little bit earlier today. So, Doctor, we first off should talk a little about, you started off today by talking about biometeoelectromagnetics.
Correct.
So let's talk a little about you and your background and where you're coming from as we visit today.
Well, thank you, Ed. You're probably wondering, how did this Brit get to the state of Montana? It's a long story. Over 65 countries, I've seen this beautiful planet and all of its weather. I basically was this geek at Cornell University studying atmospheric sciences. And then I decided, after a stint in Japan, to do an MBA, because I realized how businesses are so impacted by these cycles that we've been talking about. And then in the last 7 years, I've just completed my doctorate in natural health with an emphasis on how it impacts us in our lives with the weather. And now, I hate to say it, I'm doing my second doctorate. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment, but that is in the biometeoelectromagnetics.
Okay, that's a relatively new field. I mean, it's got a big name, but we're talking about life, weather, and electromagnetics, which we're going to talk more about here, too.
Absolutely. Well, let's focus in on something that, you know, Ed, you're always a leading educator for kids and adults alike. We've got a compass.
Okay.
All right? And when kids and adults enter into this compass, whether you're hiking or at school, it's going to point to north. Well, that is the magnetic north, don't forget. And as we talked about last week, Tampa had to change its agonic lines or runway lines to alter for the changing magnetic lines in the planet. So when this points to north, it's pointing to that changing magnetic north. And so I think we had a map this morning, didn't we, that shows these oscillations?
Let's take a look at that, a map that's showing some of the major oscillations and things that we normally look at in terms of long-term weather forecasting. I think the name that jumps out to most people on the map is La Nina, but that's actually influenced by a lot of these other oscillations.
That's right. Of course, La Nina is in the news all the time because it's a very sexy term, obviously, right? But obviously on the screen here, all your viewers can see all of these white letters in black background. The AO in the top right, that's the Arctic Oscillation. The MJO is the Madden-Julian Oscillation. They have all these names, and you can see there La Nina off the west coast of South America. But the big one is the PDO. And the PDO stands for Pacific Decadal Oscillation. And I've got there on the bottom, the PDO is really the horse that's pulling the old Montana wagon, so to speak, which is La Nina, and it's not the other way around. So we have to look at the PDO and what that's doing. And again, that's an oscillation. The O is for the oscillation in PDO. And remember, that's going backwards and forwards. So depending on the cycle, that's what we're going to get in weather.
So by watching these major oscillations or these shifts in the patterns, it helps give us some clues as to what long-term weather effects are going to be.
That's right. And the thesis that's becoming more and more common, at least that's what I'm studying, is that as these oscillations happen on the planet, we have too the same cycles with our health. In other words, your immunity, my health, may vacillate up and down depending on the changing magnetics of the planet. And I think, Ed, this is my prediction, just like, you know, warming next week, is that you're going to see a fusion of weather, natural medicine, energetic medicine, and changing climate patterns. And it's all going to be fused into one beautiful nugget to help people basically affect their lives more positively.
So would there be a natural correlation between just changing weather and changes in your health then? I mean, can it be a good thing or a bad thing, or is it just changes offsetting things in your body that necessarily don't want to be offset?
Well, you're very much correct. And let's maybe sort of put ourselves out in the future, maybe a few years from now. There may be something that says, okay, if we're in a positive oscillation cycle, next week if you've got a business trip, maybe you ought not to make those heavy decisions because based on your health spectrum, which you'd enter into a computer, it might not be a good time to do that because the magnetics are against your individual health system.
So you're looking ahead. You're thinking that there's going to be ways that we'll be able to predict these shifts in oscillation, not only to predict what the weather patterns will be, but potentially what our health could be.
Absolutely. And you think about it, we are branching out in many new ways. Even in Montana, we've got many specialists in alternative and natural health and energetic medicine. And even regular MDs are inviting these other doctors in to basically enhance our overall health. And if we can add then in climate and weather, I think we've got the golden nugget for our health in the future.
Okay, let's finish up then, because I know people are going to have questions. They did the last time you were on. This is all new science.
Right.
How can people get more information?
Well, basically, first of all, our site is afcrisk.com, and that's obviously just a weather site. But obviously, there's a consulting aspect in this, whether it affects businesses from Montana or Wyoming or worldwide. And then obviously, I do also consulting on the health side.
Okay. And thank you very much for being here.